Okay. Adam22 is a degenerate. Adam22 is a cock. Adam22 let his wife get derailed by a porn star. And he thinks it was cool. Now, the story is not as prevalent in the news as it was a couple of weeks ago, but I just have to say this since we're talking about to talk about this, because he also invited Andrew Tate to be part of his you know, well, offering up his wife to Andrew Tate. Now, what kind of real man does that? Thinks it's okay to offer up your wife to another man to be derailed by another man and then to make it public and think it's cool and get paid for it when he doesn't even need the money. And then for the wife, for her to be okay with it. You know what? I don't see that marriage lasting very long. Maybe I'll give it a year, and that's being generous, because he was on the internet trying to cope, doing all kinds of stuff. Now he invited Andrew Tate to participate in his wife. And it's so disgusting. Very disgusting. Only a weak man, very weak, feminized man would do something like that. That's all I have to say about that. Teddy bear. Okay, let's get back into it. Let's go. Let's go.
Well, there's
Hold on, can I fill in real quick, Andrew? You know,
you're out, Aiden. We can't look you. You're not in this conversation anymore.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Andrew. Would you, Andrew? Would you double penetrate her, bro? Would you do that, Andrew? Go ahead. Finish the answer.
If all pop together, is that chill?
There's absolutely 0% chance of that happening. And it's not because Elena is particularly unattractive. It's because she's married to Adam, and I have no interest in degenerate, pointless sex, and I have no interest in making a spectacle of myself, or even just involving myself in anything which I deem to be overall haram and pointless. That's just not something I'd be interested in. There's not a single amount of money on the planet you could pay me to undertake. So
you were very polite. I'm not going to be so polite. I thought he was an absolute degenerate. Mm-hmm. And I mean that the idea of having a woman making the vows that you make in marriage and literally offering her body as he did to you was a form of degeneracy. And you were being very nice and measured. And I think that for that moment, that was the best thing that you possibly could have done, because she looked quite vulnerable. Yeah. Lena, I think is her name. Yeah. But how do you reconcile that now, right? You're in a circumstance like this. You're being polite. You did say, I'm uncomfortable. You did say that I would never do this. And I think that was really important for you to say. But you're not the same person. I mean, how did you? Yeah. Even reflecting on it. It's so disgusting. He offered you his wife.
It is pretty disgusting. And it's also pretty misogynistic, because he didn't ask her. He offered her. Mm-hmm. I felt sorry for her. So I was very measured with my conversation with them, because I felt sorry for her. I could tell she was nervous. She was swinging on the chair back and forth. She didn't want to be there. She felt extremely nervous. And I think that only a coward would berate a very nervous, very scared woman, even if she did something which I personally disagree with, even if I think Adam is personally, he doesn't align with my morals, because she was so nervous and because she was so almost afraid she looked. Mm-hmm. And I think she expected me to go at her hard. So I just felt sorry doing it. I just didn't, I couldn't find, maybe I'm getting soft in my old age, but I think she knows what I think, and I think she knows what the world thinks. And I think if I go at her too hard, it's just going to break her. And I don't really like the idea of her, turning off the camera and bawling her eyes out. I think that God will teach her the lessons she needs to learn from her experience, both positive and negative. And I think that's God's job to do, and not necessarily mine. But yeah, it was certainly uncomfortable, and it shows how degenerate the world is becoming. Yeah. And pornography as a whole is simply just, I think it's an effect. I think it's a tool which is used to ensure that the male populace stays as docile as possible. Mm-hmm. I don't think that any of the things that are happening to the male population are accidental. I think that keeping us as docile as possible is very interesting for the people who are in charge of the world, because we're the warrior class. At the end of the day, it's going to boil down to the men who are going to stand up and actually do something about anything at some point in time. So I think they like the idea of us being docile. And I mean, how much more docile can you get than a man sitting there looking at a screen, not even want to reproduce for real because he's just staring at a screen? And I think that's just a next stage in the slave mind.
And it's everywhere now. Whereas, and this is something that my husband says, he doesn't have any social media. He's like, Instagram is pornography. I open my Instagram and I've got Emily Ratajkowski's butt cheeks.
Yeah.
And I'm not a man, so I don't have that same biological reaction to seeing it. But I can only imagine how difficult it is for a man when you open an app and you've got Kim Kardashian offering her body to Emily Ratajkowski. Even if you're walking down the street, I've realized even how desensitized I've become to pornography, because you see an ad for Gucci and for whatever reason, she's got to be completely naked while she's holding the bag.
I remember in my lifetime, there were music videos that got censored or banned or can only be played after 10 or 11 at night. And if you watch them now, you'd be like, what? For what? What is that? A bikini? Like, it's nothing. It's amazing how quickly it has degenerated. And yeah, absolutely.
And we're all degenerating with it. Like I've realized the fact that I don't have a reaction to seeing the half-naked woman holding a Gucci bag means that I have been desensitized to pornography. And I can only imagine what that does to men.
Oh, completely. And but this is what the powers that be want. They want to make sure that the male populace is as docile as possible. And they do that with a large array of weapons. And they do that with a web of tools. And I believe that I'm the counter to that, which is the reason I ended up attacked in the first place. But unfortunately, when you buy into the slave mind programming, you do not become the kind of man who can easily attract a woman, because you're not attractive to females as a whole. So how do you satisfy yourself? You end up sitting there staring at a screen, and they convince you that's a good life to live as a man, and that's perfectly fine and perfectly normal. And you don't even get to genetically reproduce. I do also, though, and I want to make this clear, I do believe in absolute and utter self-accountability as a man. I think as a man, everything that happens to you is your fault. Me going to jail was my fault. Me being attacked online was my fault. If all these bad things that happened to me, I will take responsibility for, even if I believe they were unfair or unjust. And I think that any man who's going to sit there and say, I'm struggling, he also needs to wake up and understand that if you're going to truly struggle to not click on a website, then you're going to deserve the terrible life you're going to live. And the devil or the matrix or whatever you want to call them are going to fill your life with temptations. They're going to fill your life with easy way outs that they're going to want you to take, because the good road is usually the hardest road. And if you're going to continue to fall for them, then you're going to have to suffer the consequences of that. So it's double-edged. It's certainly difficult that pornography is everywhere and men are struggling with it. But to me, what's even more upsetting is that these men don't have enough fortitude and enough mental strength to wake up and say, I'm better than that. But this is the thing, right? So I'm about to get started, Candace.
Good, get started.
This is the thing. But this is the thing, right? So when you attack a man's mental fortitude on one issue, you attack on all issues. This is why it's done purposefully. To resist the slave mind, you need to be able to resist in the first place. How can you resist a slave mind if you have no physicality, you have no willpower, no ability to mentally resist anything? Well, then what you're going to end up doing, you're going to end up eating the bugs and watching the porn and sitting in front of your computer. And that's what they want from the people. So I think that it's actually all very interconnected. People come at me with the porn problem, and I get the same thing. Guys say to me all the time, hey, what are you going to do? What should I do? I struggle with pornography. And I say, that's because you have nothing else in your life in order. If you were in good physical condition and you had the money you were supposed to have and you had the mentality you were supposed to have, you wouldn't need it. So the reason you're so addicted to porn is because everything else in your life is a failure.
Exactly. And this is a so important point here, what he's saying. I read it somewhere. I don't remember who said it first, but he says, if a man who doesn't live on purpose is easily distracted by pleasure. Let me repeat that. A man who doesn't live on purpose or doesn't know what his purpose is or live his life with purpose, you can say and phrase it however you want it, means the same. If you don't know as a man, and you don't understand and have insight and understanding of what your purpose is here on earth, you will be easily distracted by pleasure. And porn or corn is one of those pleasures that you can be easily distracted by. Then there's that, and there's a whole bunch of other things, right? Hooking up with women. What do you call it? Where you just have all of these. I mean, there's so many things that will come under the pleasure category that if you are not living a purpose-driven life and you're not living intentionally to leave an impact in this world and a legacy behind, you will be easily distracted by pleasure.